Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
One of the most moving images for me of the protests that have been happening in Israel over the past months was this last week, the march that went from Tel Aviv to Israel, to Jerusalem, to the Knesset. It took 4 days and they walked all the way up on the highway. If any of you have been to Israel in July, the sun is pretty hot. Not an easy trek, but thousands did it, some the whole way, some just part of the way, waving flags and singing. It made me think of images of other great marches in this country and in India and MLK and Gandhi. And it spoke to me of both the hope and the hopelessness of this moment and of what's happening in Israel. Hope, because on one hand there is an unprecedented amount of people who are going to the streets, taking time off work from busy jobs, week after week after week. 8% of the population, more, every week coming out for months, and who've been saying largely peacefully that we cannot live as a nation if we're not democratic. We're not willing to see everything that we've built and our parents and grandparents have built through their blood and through their tears, the dream of 2,000 years of Jewish longing suddenly being unmade. And also something about suddenly feeling the preciousness of the social cohesion, even though there were so many different tribes within the country, but seeing that social cohesion erode amid all the disagreements. And also hope, I think, because there were groups of pro and anti-overhaul protesters who gathered at the Kotel, at the Western Wall, to pray, because there were images of pro and anti-protesters meeting as there's only one train to go between the two cities, some going one way, others going the other way, and meeting in the escalators, and instead of arguing with each other, saying, "We love you, you're our brothers and sisters," and expressing that kind of emotion. But also hopelessness. Hopelessness because we're not learning from the lessons of our history. Lessons that have been taught to us generation to generation, Lador Vador, through millennia, and ingrained into our Jewish psyche. And just 2 days ago we cried and mourned 2,000, as we have done for 2,000 years, the loss of our temples, the loss of 2,000, leading to exile, and 2,000 years of Jewish suffering, leading and culminating in the unspeakable horrors of the Shoah, of the Holocaust. Because Tisha B'Av is also teaching us that hatred and division were part of why all of this happened. Of course, the Romans were the perpetrators, but there were other factors, our own division that was part of it. It's incredible that we have this teaching that's been transmitted so carefully from generation to generation, from rabbinic text to story to rabbinic text, this idea that the destruction maybe did not have to happen. But there may have been a way that all of that might have been avoided. It's hard to even imagine that those 2,000 years may have been avoided. Because the Romans, they were the Romans. We couldn't change who the Romans are going to be. But there may have been a narrow but possible way to walk, holding our head high, but the second temple not being destroyed, and Jerusalem not being destroyed. And at every stage, if we had not been as reactive, if we had been not as divided, if we'd been smart and faithful to each other, and wise about what was happening, and listening to the words of the ancient prophets, as Jeremiah said, God is going to destroy this temple, but there's still a little chance. Maybe it could have been different if we'd avoided burning the food during the siege. We'd been less zealous in how we fought for what we thought was right. If we'd done even as Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who saved Judaism according to legend and was taken out of the siege of Jerusalem and negotiated with the Romans. He was even willing to negotiate with the Romans. And maybe after the temple was destroyed, we could have found a way to have it be rebuilt. There was a small opportunity there too. But we were unable to at every step. We were divided, we were hot-headed, we were unskilled in how we approached every one of those steps. And now here we are again, in such a fragile situation, back in the land, Ochelet Yoshveya, that eats in its inhabitants, or that vomits out the unworthy. We're surrounded by enemies growing stronger all the time, and still we're so divided and taking steps, one after the other, weakening the fabric, leading to ever deeper divides, with unprecedented dissension among the army reservists, every economic leader warning, every sector unheeded. But to think that the first step of all of this happened just a few days before Tisha B'Av. One of the messages of Tisha B'Av is that people, they often walk off the cliff by their own steps. This is just what people tend to do, really by our own madness, by unbridled hatred and hot-headedness and zealotry. In that story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, a ridiculous story really, where Bar Kamsa is invited instead of Kamsa to a party by mistake. And the host of the party hates Bar Kamsa, beloved Kamsa. It's when he realized he invited Bar Kamsa by mistake, he wants to throw out Bar Kamsa. And Bar Kamsa says, don't shame me in front of everybody, but he still throws him out. And he's so wounded that Bar Kamsa goes to the Romans and betrays all the leaders of Jerusalem. And this is just, it's astounding that these things still happen to us. We are the people who live with historic consciousness. And all of the last few parshiot of the book of Numbers recapped everything that happened before, the 40 years in the desert, so the Moses trying to teach the people, this is what happened during those journeys. And all the last few weeks at the beginning of Deuteronomy, also a recap, history. During the 40 years, this is what happened. Here's where you lost courage, and here's where this happened, and that happened, where you were rebellious. Because Moses is trying to tell them, don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Don't you dare do it again. And the Shema Yisrael Eloheinu Echad, the last letter of Shema Ayin, and the last letter of Echad, Dalet, spell Ed, witness. We're supposed to be witnesses to history, not throwing it all out, not doing it all together. There's nothing new under the sun. Don't think it's going to go differently. Human behavior is the same. Okay. But this is also Shabbat Nachem. This is a Shabbat of consolation. So we can't only look at everything that's bad. It's our duty to put our minds on hope. And so I end, as I did a few weeks ago, also talking about Israel with an image from my trip to Israel, where I went to a concert, and the artist who came onto the stage at the beginning of the trip said, at the beginning of the concert, said, I can't give this concert. I'm too distraught about everything happening in this country. I can't even sing. The seams of my world are coming apart. But everybody there said, a lot of them were obviously your friends and family, said, come on, give us some joy. And she started to sing wedding songs. And suddenly the mood started to shift. And everybody started to sing and feel happiness and joy. Then she said to everybody, let's pray together like it's Yom Kippur. And everybody started to follow her and really pray like it was Yom Kippur for a new beginning. Because we can do this, we can pray, we can turn our crimson robes into fleeces of white. And to do that, we have to find comfort and consolation. And every one of us is a part of that comfort and consolation. And we all do it in our own way, becoming a vessel to bring that into the world. And so some of us bring comfort by ourselves being agents of peace, bringing opposites together, taking people who think differently and bringing them together and say, you have to sit down and work it out. And Rabbi Natan of Nemirov teaches, what is peace? It's bringing two opposites together. That's peace. Others do this work of bringing comfort by going into the streets with their fellows and protesting and doing what they believe is right in harmony with others. And others still, they embody compassion by wherever they go, doing baseless acts of love, the opposite of baseless acts of hatred, spreading love and positivity and thinking that one spark at a time, they're igniting and creating a point of positivity that can be transmitted. And yet, living in such times, not only in Israel but everywhere, as we think about the message of Shabbat Nachemu, what is crucial is that as we sing to the universe to bring consolation to his people, to her people, to all of humankind, that we each keep our own minds in hope and peace. And that's the only place from where everything else is possible. And there is the only place where we can bring comfort and the oneness that's underneath it all. Shabbat Shalom.